You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we are talking about some great saints that celebrated their feast days over the summer. We already talked about Saint Maria Goretti, and today we are talking about an incredible American saint who celebrated her feast day on July 13th. This saint is Saint Kateri. So, Saint Kateri is from the Americas, although I should be clear, she lived here before this was the United States, and she also finished her life in what is now Canada. But Saint Kateri was born in what we now see as the northern part of New York State. She belonged to the Mohawk Indian tribe. Now, at the time, this was not the United States, and the Indians were still very much in control of the land. However, Europeans had arrived on the North American continent, and the Mohawks mostly had interaction with Westerners in the form of missionaries. Many places in Europe had sent missionaries to come and spread the Christian faith. Now, some of this did this with love and compassion, while others did it in other ways. So the Mohawk Indians, some of them had converted to Christianity, and others had actually grown to hate missionaries and despise Christianity simply because of the uncharitable people that had tried to convert them. So before Saint Kateri was born, her mother had been converted to Christianity, and she loved Jesus Christ. However, at the time, a terrible disease called smallpox would go through an Indian community and kill nearly everyone. At the time, there was no medicine or way to treat the disease, so if you got it, you either died or became horribly sick. Saint Kateri's mother and father were both killed by smallpox. In fact, Saint Kateri herself had it, but she survived. The disease, however, scarred her face and gave her very poor eyesight. In fact, her full name, Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, the Tekakwitha part is the Mohawk part, and it refers to her inability to see very well. So after her parents died, Saint Kateri was sent to live with her aunt and uncle. Her uncle was a chief of the Mohawk Indian tribe, and it was a pretty prestigious place to grow up with the chief. However, Saint Kateri always had this longing to understand the great love that her mother had had, even though her uncle and aunt were not Christian and even despised missionaries. However, the missionaries came back, and Saint Kateri, when hearing about Christ, remembered the words of her mother, and she too wanted to become Christian. Her aunt and uncle strictly forbid her from being Christian. In fact, they were trying to arrange a marriage for her, even though Saint Kateri desired only to be fully given to Jesus Christ as a nun. Saint Kateri continued to practice her Christian faith even though her aunt and her uncle tried to force her not to. She refused to work on Sundays since it was the Sabbath, and because of this, her family wouldn't feed her on Sundays, saying, "If you don't work, you don't eat." The persecution became so bad in her little village after Saint Kateri received First Communion that she soon fled to a small village in Canada where she could safely practice her faith in peace. However, Saint Kateri was very sick. She had been weakened by smallpox as a child, and she struggled with other diseases throughout her life. Shortly after reaching this village in Canada, she died. She was only 24 years old. But like I said with Saint Maria Goretti yesterday, we need to pay attention to what happens after a saint dies, because that is when their real work starts, when they are no longer part of this world, but with Christ in heaven. Immediately after Saint Kateri died, a miracle occurred. As I said, her face had been scarred and damaged from smallpox as a child. But instantly after she died, her face became radiant and beautiful. It was as if the beautiful soul that had lived inside of her body all of those years could finally be seen on her face. Saint Kateri continues to work miracles for those that beg for her intercession. And through this, we know that she too is in heaven with Jesus, sitting at the feet of his throne, and that if we bring our prayers to her, she can bring them directly to the ear of Jesus Christ. And so, Sprouts, here is my challenge for you today. I would like you to pray through the intercession of Saint Kateri. Pray that you can never take your own faith or your ability to practice it for granted. Saint Kateri gave up food 1 full day a week simply because she refused to not practice her faith. Pray that she can also help you have the same strength to practice and love your faith no matter what. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. If you belong to the Catholic Sprouts Patreon community, I invite you to head over there and download your Maria Goretti coloring page, as well as your play and chat guide for this week, which will continue the conversation on what it means to be a saint with the other Catholic adults in your life.